It's an important topic, just hiring and the things you need to do to build a great team. Obviously, as you scale your business, the biggest line expense you got on your income statement is usually HR in a software company. So making sure you're hiring the right amount of people at the right time is important. We're going to talk that through here and talk about metrics, talk about process.
Luke, Aulin, thanks Greg. I've been winging it, I think, my whole life, so happy to fill in and share what I've learned. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. A couple of illegitimate businesses as a kid that were successful that I don't really talk about too much. A couple of failures in my early 20s. Time as an entrepreneur at a technology software company, building 2 divisional units from the ground up. And I'm currently 5 years into my third startup. It's a company called RTOWN. I'm a co-founder and CEO, and we do digital marketing as a SaaS to the local SMB market.
Yeah, small markets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm Kristina McDougall. I am the founder and president of Artemis Canada. So we are an executive search firm. We do recruiting for a variety of tech companies. So I've been in the recruiting business, specifically focused on tech for about 20 years. So have
You're
seen
based
a
in
lot.
Waterloo. Right?
And I'm based in Waterloo.
Thanks for coming out, joining us in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. So we spent some time this morning talking about one kind of risk and how to turn that into opportunity. And I think when it comes to growing your team, especially with key hires, I think most people see opportunity around growth, but obviously there's some risk there as well. So curious just to get your thoughts around hiring when the people that you know, and sometimes those represent the lowest risks, aren't the right people for the role. What do you do? Where do you start when you need to find some key people for your team?
I'm startup founder, I first err on the side of who's been with you and shown the capabilities, assumed the role before they even got it, and do usually err on the side of giving that a try. The leap from individual contributor into leadership isn't something everyone will travel. What I think works best is you're having that conversation before that change is made about what the end could or could not look like. Because you're taking a risk with an internal promotion, losing someone who's clearly has earned it amongst their peers first. You're losing them as the individual contributor, and you're taking the risk that they'll fold into it.
Yeah.
And so you want to talk about what if they don't first, and what that looks like. So you're dealing with that without ego, without emotion, as much as possible for how that turns out. Second thing is then, if that isn't available internally, of course, then you're looking outside. And been practicing, I don't know if people are familiar with the book Top Grading. I confess, a lot of entrepreneurs talk about it and swear by it. It was a little too thick for me, so I read the book Who, which is the guy's son wrote it. And I can't remember who's who, Jeffrey Smart or Brad Smart. No pun. But the book Who is a really good methodology, but I also think it's incomplete. But looking outside, I look for, it's obviously values fit and culture fit and then capabilities fit. Even there, I think these methodologies are incomplete. I've added a level of a personality profile, psychologically profile key hires. And I have a great resource I use now. Having just brought on the first outside executive in my current company, she started in January. I used someone to profile her, and it's been an absolute home run. Excellent. So I recommend that.
So,
hang on.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the tool that you use for the profile?
There's a company actually locally, Simpsons and Associates. I can make an intro if you like.
I think something that we see a lot is the assumption that you mitigate the risk of hiring in a key role by hiring someone who's had success in your industry before or with a fairly big brand name. And the downside of that is it starts with experience and knowledge that arguably can be learned. and the values fit and the cultures fit sometimes comes later if you hire resume first. So how do you force that balance?
It starts with, so I think it's backwards. So
Yeah.
I think that if you're going out looking for the best resume, you're going to miss
Exactly,
opportunity. And if you're looking for the smartest person in the room, I think the teams today, the companies today that are going to thrive are the ones that have as much ego squeezed out of the business as humanly possible. And you've got a culture of, I read the book Principles recently, so Ray Dalio put it this way. I've been preaching it a different way, but it's the idea meritocracy. So it's the best ideas win. And so I think that starts at the leadership level. They've got to have the humility and the willingness to be vulnerable and fallible and wrong and publicly wrong and admit mistake. And then that paves the way and sets a framework where others can also speak their mind and take a risk, but importantly have their voice heard. The best ideas often come from the people who are closest to the problem,
Right.
not who's got the biggest degree or the biggest title. Yeah, so I hope that answers your
Yeah,
question.
no,
It helps,
absolutely.
yeah.
And an environment of safety, I think, is important too.
Yeah.
Comments?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll ask the question. We
Sure.
heard this again with non-performance. So Michael Litt, one of the previous one, talked about the difference between sort of, there's 4 quadrants. One's culture and values fit versus skill level. How do you describe placing the people on the 4 quadrants and
Sure.
how do you work that?
Yeah. So, maybe it's the same. I don't know what Michael Litt said, but I look at it, kind of XY axis, and I know there's a lot of people who think it's crass to claim people as A players, B players, and C players, and so we got to be careful with that to a degree. But this is a helpful framework for me. Is you got your core values, so that's first. That's got to be clear, and it's got to be stated, and it's got to be alive in the organization for these to be real. But kind of y-axis is core values fit, and then capabilities fit, and then this is really about metrics. And your A players are living your core values, most, if not all of the time, and hitting their KPIs. So your capabilities connect to your accountabilities, which connect to your metrics. And that's on an individual level. So A players are hitting their numbers and living values. B players might miss some numbers sometime, but live the values all the time. Leadership's role is to coach Bs to As and get them back on plan. The biggest risk is your C player who's hitting the numbers all the time but eroding your culture. You've got to get them out. Even if they're helping you, they're harming you more than you can see sometimes. And then C players who are missing their numbers and not living the values, that's the easiest to say, yeah, it's time to free up their future.
In the need to move quickly, which most tech companies are facing, how far ahead are you planning out your org chart? So do you have a plan for what things are going to look like?
Yeah,
some amount of time
absolutely. Yeah, so and we do, we just because things move, I feel like things are moving so fast. We're to monthly performance reviews. It's really about actually like career discussions and open two-way. So leadership team coaching and growing people. We're talking, and every month at my company right now, we do a monthly town hall. So we practice open book management. So we share the financial statements, including the forecasted cash flow, and we actually will go into the details of like where are we planning specific hires, and we're talking about what the org chart looks like out into the future.
How
so
far?
that we're planning 3 years out. We don't go from a forecast point of view. We don't go further than 3. I just haven't figured out, frankly, how to nail one. The spreadsheets are always wrong, no matter what. However much you forecast. But what that does is it helps connect what people are doing today with where the organization is, where we want it to go, and what the roles might look like in the org chart, and how that connects to how the company earns money and generates cash. And so then in the performance review, or the monthly career discussions, if you will, we're talking about capabilities, metrics, accountabilities. Today, we're also talking about that person's, future and laying out a framework for how can you grow into that. in the future. So,
using software to help you do that, or
actually, it's a really cool software. A local CEO out of Whistler, some notoriety. Her name's Shannon Susko. She's built a platform called the Metronome Growth Systems. And I don't know if anyone follows the Rockefeller Habits or EOS, Traction, any sort of business operating system. She follows a one-page plan methodology. The software is in the cloud, so you can update one-page plan. You can put your org chart in. You can look at your org chart by people based on accountabilities, metrics, and capabilities. So I find that tool from an operational point of view super, super helpful.
Your teams are largely remote, so you have people, I guess, all over the province. How have you managed both growing those teams and keeping everybody feeling like they're part of the same culture and the same business?
Video conference, daily huddle. Everyone sees everyone on a big screen or on their phones or on their laptop.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah, every single day, and it's a 10-minute meeting, and that I think is the best way because it's a daily habit. It's blocked in the calendar. It's mandatory, and then we've got huddle leaders that make it worthwhile. And it's about boosting energy, sharing good news, raising issues where you're stuck, and creating alignment.
Creates a cadence of
exactly.
just good news, bad news.
You got
every
it.
day.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one, and then monthly town hall. So I think one of the biggest thing companies struggle with is, the feeling when you're outside of where the headquarters is, oh man, decisions are being made here, and I'm just like, I'm out here, and I've got no part in that. So we in town hall open up big company decisions to the broader group, and enlist the feedback from everywhere to help people who aren't as close proximity feel as part of that. So
you actually
town
open
hall,
up.
and then,
so I'm going to ask a question. So not everybody's built for startup culture. Right?
Yeah.
So
sure.
how many employees you guys?
We're at 15 now.
15.
Yeah.
You share the balance sheet and the income statement. Does that not cause some people to go, I can't do this? Have you lost people by that method, or those are the people you wanted to lose?
Yeah, I had early fear around it, and then we just. Yeah, eventually it grew to, we want an ownership mindset, we cultivate that. We actually ask for it in our culture. We want a culture of accountability and an ownership mindset. We also pay accordingly, so we do the whole employee share ownership, and then complementing that is, we think it's important to teach the rule, how business is measured and how we keep score as a company. We early on, when cash was more uncertain than where we are today as a company, it was scary, and I think we probably did lose some people to the holy crap. I don't know.
My job.
My job, right?
I'm doing my job, but there's no money to pay me. And
and so we had to be very careful with messaging back then, and how these things were communicated.
I mean, it's a balance, right? I mean,
it is. It is.
Some people want to know, and some people don't.
That's true.
Right?
And it's interesting. So the latest one, last month's town hall, put it out to the whole group and people from remote, and I put it to the group. The only thing we don't share is what each of us earns at the company. So what's hidden is personal personal income. And I actually believe we could. There are upside benefit to opening up even further.
Do we trust Glassdoor? Is it something we want to embrace, or do we work around it? I mean, that's the classic. So maybe you could comment on that, Glassdoor and other sort of disclosure things. Do you review it on a regular basis to see how you're doing as a CEO and how the company's being perceived? Typically, review sites are based on negative reviews because So how do you balance out the public disclosure on that stuff?
Yeah, I focus way more on making the environment great to work in and have happy people. We review Glassdoor. Our reviews are actually quite good, thankfully.
Good. Congratulations.
We did have an employee leave recently, so there is one bad one that I just found out about this week. So it is kind of raising that as the first time for me, going, wow. And hang on, that wasn't exactly an honest take on things.
That wasn't my take. That's, I mean,
as the CEO,
you maybe,
But there were some things that were honest in there that we had to own as well. So some of the criticism was true. And so I take the thing that's like, these things, have value for different stakeholders. I'm not overly concerned about muzzling anything or overly policing that. I think the better focus is build a great company, create value for customers, and create a workspace where people don't want to leave. They love where they are. Yeah. And and then the job is to over communicate the culture cornerstones and then manage within those consistently. And at the very least, everyone's expectations will be super, super clear, or should be as much as you can. And whether they stay and flourish or go will be mostly up to them.
Any questions from the group?
Yeah.
Any comments? Okay.
I think just around sort of what we see on the Glassdoor side, which is probably interesting, is from a candidate's perspective, everybody checks. Most people are intelligent enough to understand that negative reviews are usually a disgruntled ex-employee, that it's some ratio of truth to not. But smart companies are paying attention just because there's nuggets of truth in there. Right. And I think it's good to know, just like with your brand, if there's some negative word on the street, then it's good to know that it's out there. But I think just being transparent about what is that employee experience likely to be, so that what you're projecting as part of your recruiting messaging is accurate. So that if you've got, and through the interview process as well, kind of letting people know exactly what they're getting into, and that's not always good news, because it's a pretty big leap for someone to join any company, especially if they're leaving a job. So knowing what they're getting into, the right person is going to be excited about even the bad news, especially if they've got the ability to influence it. So
you want to see if their eyes are lighting up.
Like, do I get
even
to tackle
in the face
that
of
problem?
when you share the warts? It's like,
Well, and there's a certain element of trust that develops as well. And we kind of draw the analogy, it's the server that tells you not to order the fish.
Right.
All of a sudden, whatever that person, recommends, there's credibility there.
That could be a whole best in SaaS sort of topic on the remote working. How do you? I mean, I think technology is not always perfect as it work, right? No. And you definitely feel when you're on the other side of the of the teleconference that the side conversations happen.
Retention should be, I love my job and I've got lots of growth, so I want to stay. But I'm able to work from home a couple of days, or I'm able to get away to do a family responsibility and it doesn't impact my output, so it shouldn't impact my employability, is a big retention tool. If someone has that flexibility, you can't pull them away into another role that doesn't offer it.
There you go.
So it's a huge
it's more
thing.
Retention versus attraction.
It's a retention and attraction thing, but I think to get it right, you have to have a culture where the managers of those people or the leaders of those people know how to measure output and keep those people connected, because if you have, it's really hard with newer employees, or people that are newer to the workforce, because maybe they don't have the habits or they don't really know what that kind of freedom means. Is it good enough that my phone is on when I'm at the mall, or is it, do I need to be producing something? So figuring out what that looks like, because one of the things that we've seen with startups is it's easy to say, let's do unlimited vacation, let's do all of these things, because we're 5 people in a room and I trust you all and I know you, and we all have habits, but can you scale that? So I think when you think about, I think Joseph's comment was like, will future me be pissed off that current me did this thing? So I think when you think about your any sort of policies, like what will this look like when we're 20 people, and can I take it away?
Well, I think that's true as you go, and we talked about that, and Joseph had a good point, as you scale, the culture changes, what you hire changes, and there's people who want growth, and there's people who can't handle growth, and there's people who are good at one, and so as you scale and get to hundreds of employees, it's a very different looking workforce, right? And so I'm going to do a quick plug for one of our portfolio companies, which he's not here, is a company called 7 Geese, which we invested in and does the OKR type of software, which is when I kind of get into, like, how do you make sure everybody knows they're on pace to drive towards the ultimate objective of the overall company, right? So they're just one sort of, and I think the OKR space is full of other solutions, but they're doing it in their local company in Vancouver.
Right on.
Hey Greg, is 7 Geese like more like a metronome effect, or is it more about strictly on the HR and employee engagement?
I think
side?
it's more on the metronome-like stuff, right?
It is,
So,
like overall.
and we're looking at it for even for TIMIA as a small way of just keeping in, you know, we're diverse and you want the flexibility and stuff like that. So it's important to do that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, you know, one of the other things that we've not touched on, and I think we've got a little bit of time, is compensation and how to get creative as an early stage company when you're, I mean, someone mentioned competing with Amazon for talent, and we've got Google down the road. And so how do you put a comp package together that makes sense for people? Obviously, it's not all about the money, but it's interesting when people have a piece of paper in front of them that they look to the numbers. What does that look like for your business?
Yeah, well, so we try to design our comp. It extends from values as well as where we want the company to go. So you've got your future vision that you're building toward. We want a culture of accountability and an ownership mindset I spoke to. So, you know, philosophically, I just believe that if you're asking for an ownership mindset, you're asking for people to think like the founder, the owner, and you want that to extend out, you've got to pay like owners get paid.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the right thing to do is to make that as part of the comp.
So do you have
we
like a
do
profit
that here.
share type piece? Or?
So it's shares. It's
Okay.
and in fact at RTOWN we have one class of shares. I've just, for whatever reason, the Jim Collins quote, it's like 1% vision, 99% alignment. Like that just stuck with me, and I've thought that, you know, even as we raise capital, it's one class of shares. And then the employees have the same class of shares. So for me, just because I'm simple and not very smart, that makes it easier to say everyone's on, at least from an ownership point of view, we're trying to divide this up fairly and honor contribution and value across a broad group of stakeholders or people, RTOWNers we call them, all of them. Then it's going to be easy to say that when a decision's made to the benefit of shareholders, everyone's going to benefit similarly.
which is difficult to do.
And that
Now
can be
that makes you
difficult, for sure.
unfinanceable for certain investors.
Right. Yeah.
All right, certain
Yeah.
investors will only take preferred shares, I'm
Right.
assuming. So
Yeah.
I don't
Going,
subscribe
I don't
to that.
wanna, yeah, exactly.
Right?
And
So
put me ahead of others.
Any comments on, I mean, this is a hot topic, we'll bring it up, like diversification, hiring women and people of minorities. And I'll step back, and I always thought there's, you know, I was never a big believer in affirmative action because you should hire on the merits and the value they bring to the organization. The best argument I've heard recently is it is actually about returns on your investment, because diversification leads to better product, leads to better customer satisfaction and understanding who is on the other side of buying my product. So comment on that, and have you found it difficult or easy to build a diversified workforce?
As an entrepreneur, I believe the best societal value we can create is through our enterprise that we're building. I've always approached this from a merit point of view. And as a result of that, but by just naturally have a very diverse.
Well, and your customer
culture.
base must be diverse. If you're selling to small business,
Yeah,
they must
it's all over
speak
the
other
map.
languages.
Yeah,
I mean,
correct.
it's got to be.
Yeah, I have 2 females on the leadership team. I have a woman on my board. We have lots of different ages and races, and that's just always how it's been throughout my whole career and the teams I've led. It's been from, do they fit with the culture? And culture isn't anything but what's in here and here in a person. And are they capable, or can they become capable of performing into what they're going to be accountable for? I feel like if we confuse the discussion in any other way, we're going to miss something. So to me, it's always been about merit.
Yeah.
And it's always been about how does this individual that is being picked for whatever it is going to impact the tribe? What value will they bring, and how will that impact the entire team? As a result, I've got a very diverse group, and we perform well. But I haven't approached it from, oh my God, we don't have enough diversity. What do we do about it? And I feel like we're having these discussions because so many people have been thinking that way. So it's probably a worthy discussion.
It is. I think mostly because it gives you a different perspective on what the product should do, right? So, and whatever you're offering and the value prop.
So true.
And it is, I would say it's gone from about half the time, maybe 5 years ago, to almost every single search that we kick off. Someone leans over the table and says, actually, after all of, here's our big, very difficult list of things we need to look for, and it needs to be a female. Or can you please try extra hard to make sure that we have a diverse group of candidates to choose from? And I think it typically is coming from a good place. I think only once can I remember someone saying it's because we're worried that we're going to get mandated, and someone's going to look around and go, these are a bunch of old white guys, and and we've got off the game. So I think, a lot of when companies find themselves in a position where they're upside down and they're, it's not really worried about bad press so much as they're not accessing the whole talent pool. So you think, I'm only accessing this pool that is overrepresented. So now we're not the place necessarily that our young women want to grow up in, because they don't look at the top of the organization and see people that look like them and are like them. So they're worried about losing the talent, the diverse talent that's at the at the other end of the org chart. And I think where if there's bro culture and all of those things, then that's something that organizations in some cases are trying to come back from, and Silicon Valley gets a terrible rap for having created that. So, and I think some of that is just, where are you looking? So how are you attracting talent, and are you using selection tools and a selection process that is blind to things that seem like culture fit, but really are just, we have a shared experience because we both grew up in the same kind of neighborhood with the same kind of affluence, with the same kind of language. So where we see people that are like, I'm not sure about culture fit, you really need to dig into, well, what does that mean? Well, this person grew up in another country, and we don't think that we think alike in some of these ways, or they might manage people differently, or in a lot of cases it's just, well, we don't know. So I don't necessarily want to bring in a manager that was born in a totally another culture, because I don't know anything about that culture, so I'm not quite sure what they might bring. So I much prefer to hire that manager who not only grew up in a similar neighborhood, but also worked at a company that I know, went to the school I know.
So be careful of false connections, right?
False connections, check your assumptions, make sure you're not equating culture fit with, can I go have a beer with you? Right. Because that's not relevant. As soon as you have things like a drinking culture, you do eliminate a lot of other things. People who don't drink.
What about firing? Let's talk about the other side. Hard thing to do. Not everybody's up for it. How often have you done it? How do you approach it? And somebody's clearly not working out.
Yeah. Well, I like the thought of freeing up someone's future. So I've had it go, terribly wrong. How often have I done it? Lots. It's never fast enough. So that, I think, maybe is the
true.
first comment.
That's the common theme we've heard every time.
The common theme is,
I've waited too long and as soon as I did it, I'm like, why didn't I do this 3 or 4 months ago?
Yeah, and the whole organization feels it once it's done. Which then you're like, damn, they've been judging me the whole time. Why didn't I hear from more people on this?
Yeah.
Could have been a lot easier.
And the morale, I think the morale outcome of that is usually more positive than you expect, right? Because all of your high performers are like, I can't believe that we've been keeping the bar so low for so long.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Direct, positive, take the ego out of it. It's not, as much as you can, not about them, it's about you. You didn't coach them through something. You didn't cross your T's in the hiring process. You don't have, keep it away from them as much as possible. I feel like that both protects your organization and helps the candidate leave feeling a lot better about things. And it's also true, so that also feels like the right thing to do. So as much as possible, take accountability for that outcome.
When you're thinking about bringing someone on, you have to think way beyond the job that you need to fill now. And it's really easy to do that. So we'll see someone with a job description that says, in the next 6 months, I need to solve this problem. I need to figure out sales operations because we need to build a machine and we don't have metrics in place and we need to scale. So I need to hire somebody that's built a sales operations process before. But there's not necessarily a lot of thought as to, okay, well then after 6 months and it's built, what are they going to do? And is that the right person to do whatever that job is next? So when you're thinking about, here's our 3-year org chart, and probably the person that's in that role will transition into this role, is that the same person that you want on the team for that amount of time? Or did you just hire the person who's the very best at that tactical thing? And it happens a lot at those tactical levels. So, to hire the person, and sometimes you get dazzled by the fact that, wow, this person from this really great brand name company that was involved in their demand generation or did this thing for them wants to come work for me. So I'm going to open the door, even though I'm like something doesn't smell right, or like there's a chance that maybe they're going to be the wrong person moving forward. So to keep, like, if the values fit isn't there, and if you can't imagine what they're going to be doing after that, it's tricky.
Luke, I really appreciate you filling in. I really
last
appreciate you
minute
filling in.
to-
So thank you very much for doing that. Christina, thanks for coming out.